The digital missive materialized at precisely 20:30 a.m., its arrival coinciding eerily with the dimming cabin lights and the Sao Paulo metropolis receding into the inky vastness beneath the aircraft. Its subject line, stark and chilling, declared termination notice, effective immediately. For a few disorienting seconds, the words refused to coalesce into coherent meaning. I blinked repeatedly, convinced the screen hadn't fully rendered. But it had. Every crushing detail was there, etched with crystalline clarity: my name, my designation, and the stark pronouncement that sent my heart plummeting through the floor of the cabin: your employment with Venturon Technologies has been terminated, effective immediately. Your access has been revoked. Please do not return to any company property. No phone call, no face-to-face meeting, no perfunctory expression of gratitude. Just this cold, impersonal decree. And the signatory, Grayson Hart, the CEO himself, the very individual who, a mere fortnight prior, had gripped my hand firmly and declared, "Marin, you are the only one I trust to execute this." I surveyed the slumbering cabin, a panorama of business class cocoons occupied by passengers cocooned in eye masks, their pillows faintly wine-stained. I was utterly alone, adrift in the soft thrum of the jet engines, amidst a silence that suddenly felt more deafening than any sound I had ever encountered. 10 grueling days, 3 sprawling continents, Tokyo for the foundational alignment, London for the intricate compliance frameworks, and Sao Paulo for the pivotal closure. I hadn't merely contributed to this monumental deal, I had meticulously architected it from the ground up. 3 titans of global industry, poised for a synchronized migration to Venturon's proprietary cloud system, a transaction valued at a staggering $1.5 billion over 5 years. And now I was no longer an employee. A frigid sensation began to crystallize in my chest. Not fury, not yet. Just a profound, disorienting disbelief. It was as though the very ground had been yanked from beneath me mid-stride. I remained motionless, my gaze fixed on the laptop screen for another protracted minute. Then, without uttering a single sound, I reached beneath my seat and retrieved a second device, a sleek, unbranded matte, black laptop, heavily encrypted. The one that no one at Venturon was even aware existed. I flipped it open, logged in, and watched its display flicker to life. And then, a faint, knowing smile touched my lips. They believed this marked the terminus of my journey. They had no conceivable notion that I had already embarked upon another, a full 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks prior, I had stood in that identical glass, paneled boardroom on the 32nd floor, a silent observer as seasoned executives scrambled desperately to salvage a crumbling $400 million contract. The client, a notoriously intractable European consortium, had abruptly exited mid-negotiation. The legal department was in a state of outright panic. Finance was engaged in a furious ballad of finger-pointing, and the vice president of global sales, his composure utterly shattered, had verged on tears. I didn't wait for an invitation. I simply strode in, retrieved the abandoned proposal from the expansive table, radically reconfigured its core structure in a mere 20 minutes, and then requested a private audience with the consortium's head delegate by dawn the following day. The contract was not only rescued from the brink of collapse, but had been significantly expanded to encompass 2 entirely new territories. This wasn't my inaugural feat for Venturon. It was simply the most recent in a growing repertoire of miracles. The triumph was met with a celebratory champagne toast in the executive lounge. Appreciative applause rippled through the room. Grayson, ever the politician, offered one of his practiced, hollow grins and intuned, "No, that's the caliber of leadership we require at the next echelon." A whisper of a promotion, executive vice president, global strategy, even began circulating through the hallway chatter. The title sounded preposterous, overtly grandiose, and long overdue. For I was more than a mere deal closer. I was the ultimate firewall. The one they summoned when the men in bespoke suits, proved utterly incapable of landing the plane. I had engaged in intricate negotiations with monolithic energy corporations, sprawling telecom empires, and enigmatic foreign ministries. I commanded 4 languages, operated with 2 distinct mobile phones, and for 7 years, my existence had been defined by transient stays in airports. I was the silent force that lent Venturon an illusion of far greater stability than its underlying reality. And yet, the coveted title remained perpetually out of reach. A week after the champagne had been savored, after the initial glow had faded, I was informed that the promotion was in progress. Then it was under review, followed by an unnerving silence. Initially, I dismissed it as paranoia. Perhaps a corporate restructuring was underway. Perhaps the human resources department was notoriously sluggish. Perhaps, for once, it wasn't personal. Then, I inadvertently overheard it. It was during a board lunch. I was sequestered in the adjoining conference room, meticulously preparing a portfolio. The sliding door had been left ever so slightly ajar. I mean, come on. One board member chuckled dismissively. Marin is brilliant, yes. But let's be brutally honest. She enters a room, and suddenly, no other man wishes to speak. She utterly dominates every single pitch. Another chimed in, indeed. She's not precisely EVP material, is she? More of field operations. Field operations. As if I were some glorified, dispensable negotiator they could dispatch globally, and then conveniently forget. That specific moment lingered with me, far longer than the disappointment of the missed promotion. Because the unvarnished truth was glaringly apparent, they harbored no desire to elevate me. Their sole objective was to contain me, too self-assured, too meticulously polished, too many victories that simply could not be conveniently attributed to someone else. I was the indispensable asset they called upon when multi-million-dollar deals teetered on the precipice, but never the chosen one they desired at the table when the accolades were being distributed. I stood there, rooted in that empty conference room, clutching the meticulously crafted portfolio I had invested weeks in assembling, and a bitter, undeniable realization washed over me. It was never about merit. It was unequivocally about threat perception. The quiet, unobtrusive ones ascended. The vocal ones, particularly individuals like myself, were systematically sidelined. And yet, I did not storm out. I did not unleash a torrent of righteous indignation. I simply returned to my desk, booked 3 consecutive international flights, and immediately immersed myself in the execution of the largest deal in the company's entire history. Because if they stubbornly refused to bestow upon me the title, I would construct one of my own. It's an intriguing paradox how betrayal seldom announces its arrival with a thunderous crash. Often, it seeps in, an insidious, imperceptible drip, unnoticed initially, until one is standing in a room, ankle deep in the accumulating tide, left to ponder precisely when it commenced. A year prior, Mallory Hart found herself in a precarious predicament. She had recently been brought into Venturon as a strategic advisor, a deliberately vague designation, heavily padded by the weight of legacy. She was Grayson's daughter. She possessed virtually no technical acumen, barely 2 years of rudimentary corporate exposure, and had committed one egregious error: an unauthorized data transfer during a client demonstration that inadvertently exposed sensitive personal information from a pilot partner based in Singapore. It should have erupted into a public scandal of epic proportions. The legal team was in a state of absolute disarray. The marketing department had frozen, paralyzed. And Grayson, he placed a call to me. Clean it up quietly. He instructed over the phone, his voice hushed. She didn't intend to. She simply didn't know. I offered no protest. I leveraged every connection I possessed, working tirelessly around the clock to contain the potentially catastrophic data leak, and masterfully spun the entire narrative into a benign, beta testing glitch that never progressed beyond the obscure confines of trade blogs. I even personally handled the media inquiries, ensuring her name was conspicuously absent from any press notes. No one offered a word of thanks. I didn't solicit it. I rationalized it as loyalty. That safeguarding the company inherently meant safeguarding everyone within its structure, even the CEO's daughter. But loyalty, I would soon discover, begins its slow, corrosive decay when it ceases to be reciprocal. 3 days preceding my transcontinental expedition, I accessed a shared drive to finalize the pitch materials for the Trident deal. These were the meticulously crafted slides I had been refining for weeks: intricate charts, granular analytics, the precise proposal structure, all meticulously laid out with surgical precision. And there they were. Flawless. Exactly as I had left them. Save for one damning detail. The document properties explicitly listed the author as Mallory Hart. At first, I dismissed it as an oversight. Perhaps she had downloaded them and inadvertently saved over my original. But as I methodically clicked through the presentation, a chilling realization dawned: she had made subtle, almost imperceptible edits, rephrasing minor bullet points, making slight adjustments to the layout, yet leaving my entire foundational structure perfectly intact. The skeletal framework was undeniably mine. The core pitch was mine. The name affixed to it was not. She hadn't even bothered to provide a perfunctory notification. That evening, I sat in my apartment, the city lights below my window casting a mesmerizing glow. I fixated on the slide deck until the meticulously aligned lines began to blur into an indistinct haze. And then, I performed an action of which I was not particularly proud. I simply closed the laptop. I did not confront her. I did not dispatch a furious message to Grayson. I did not confide in a single soul, because, deep down, I harbored a chilling certainty of what the inevitable outcome would be. They would summarily dismiss it as collaboration. They would assert that I was fabricating scenarios, or worse, that I was exhibiting territorial or emotional behavior. That particular adjective always seemed to surface whenever a woman dared to question authority. So, I remained silent. I methodically packed my luggage. I finalized my intricate flight routes. And I repeatedly reassured myself that it simply didn't matter, but it did. Because the wound was not a sudden, explosive rupture. It seeped in slowly, insidiously. Every instant someone lauded her strategic clarity. Every time I endured a meeting and witnessed her effortlessly, reciting my words as if they were her own, a fresh drop of bitterness was added. I had protected her, covered for her, meticulously salvaged her reputation. And now, she was systematically erasing mine. I have never been prone to panic. Not when multi-million-dollar deals imploded. Not when high-ranking executives disintegrated into emotional wrecks in the confines of boardrooms. And certainly not when the very ground beneath my own future began to subtly shift. So, when the unequivocal realization dawned that the promotion was a chimera, when I beheld Mallory's name emblazoned upon my own slides, and felt the oppressive weight of erasure pressing in, I did not lash out. I did not make a dramatic exit. I pivoted quietly, strategically. The unvarnished truth was, I had already initiated the construction of my escape mechanism, my parachute. A full 6 months prior. Not because I anticipated betrayal, but because years of accrued experience had irrevocably taught me a singular, immutable truth: power invariably respects leverage, not loyalty. Venturon had not always embodied its current iteration. When I first joined, it was a scrappy, tenacious entity, relentlessly clawing its way toward mid-tier prominence, brimming with incisive intellects and unadulterated ambition. Over time, however, as capital poured in, and the corrosive tendrils of internal politics took root, the very soul of the company underwent a profound transformation. Grayson ceased prioritizing the most competent candidates, instead opting to promote the safest, most pliable ones. The innovation team was systematically dismantled. Compliance, once a safeguard, was weaponized. And anyone who harbored independent, dissenting ideas was gradually inexorably frozen out. Many of those individuals were my friends. Some had served as invaluable mentors. All of them, much like myself, had quietly continued their constructive endeavors, albeit no longer for venture on. I christened the project Trivanta. No ostentatious pitch deck, no fanfare of a seed round, just a name, a meticulously crafted legal structure, and a burgeoning cadre of former engineers, astute product strategists, and meticulous compliance specialists who intimately comprehended the pervasive pain of being abandoned by the very corporate machinery they had helped forge. Every single facet of Trivanta was painstakingly designed to rectify the precise systemic dysfunctions that Venturon had so spectacularly broken. Agility instead of suffocating bureaucracy, unwavering transparency instead of stifling control, and, above all, an unyielding commitment to client-centric thinking. We made no public pronouncements. There was no need. This was not a venture fueled by vengeance. It was a meticulously positioned future, merely awaiting activation. Still, I maintained a veil of absolute secrecy. I remained under contract, diligently cultivating their trust, and I harbored no intention of igniting any bridges, unless someone else took the decisive step of lighting the match first. That moment arrived sooner than I had anticipated. It unfolded during an extended dinner in Sao Paulo, seated directly across from Luiz Mata, the esteemed CEO of Brasilink, one of the three foundational firms in the monumental Trident deal. We had just concluded our third exhaustive round of proposal fine-tuning. He was nursing a glass of amber whiskey, his tie noticeably loosened. The immense pressure of billion-dollar decisions momentarily lifted from his shoulders. He regarded me, his expression earnest and quiet, and posed a question for which I was utterly unprepared. What would it genuinely take for you to lead, instead of merely follow? I froze, my fork suspended halfway to my mouth. He continued, his voice steady. You do not speak like a mere employee, Marin. You articulate like someone who has meticulously built something from its very genesis. So, why are you not running the company? I offered a gentle, almost self-deprecating laugh. Because someone else happened to inherit it. He smiled, but did not reciprocate the laughter. But if you ever arrive at the decision to alter that dynamic, call me. Some of us genuinely prefer to back leaders, not merely logos. That moment indelibly imprinted itself upon my consciousness, not solely because it was flattering, though it undeniably was, but because it starkly mirrored everything I had been strenuously attempting to suppress. Clients possessed an acute sixth sense. They instinctively perceived the chasm between the individual performing the tangible work and the individuals shamelessly claiming the credit. They observed the identical patterns I did, the politically expedient appointments, the insidious erosion of true innovation, the perplexing silences that invariably followed periods of resounding success. And they were observing me, patiently waiting. Upon my return to New York, I divulged nothing of Lucy's pronouncement. I refrained from mentioning the discreet, unsolicited calls I had begun receiving from Telnova's procurement director. Nor did I allude to the subtle inquiries emanating from Eurocom's legal team regarding alternative partnership models. But I did decisively expand Trivanta's nascent charter. I meticulously scheduled clandestine meetings with my core group, Jenna Park, our former legal lead, Raheem Silva, the brilliant systems architect, and Noah Tan, the astute ex-finance strategist. We studiously avoided company email. We eschewed conventional office spaces. Instead, we convened in private apartments, sharing meals, and communicating exclusively via encrypted channels. Every intricate piece was meticulously falling into place. Venturon foolishly believed I was merely their closer, but I had already initiated the construction of something they could not possibly perceive, a company that harbored no need to close deals through raw power, but rather through profound purpose. Esquige had anyone stumbled into the executive ballroom without the benefit of context. they would have unequivocally concluded it was a coronation. Gold linens draped lavishly, crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, a live quartet serenaded the assembled guests. The company had spared no conceivable expense for the Strategic Growth Gala, which, in stark reality, was an ostentatious celebration of Mallory, Hart's precipitous promotion to Vice President of International Strategy. The sheer irony was a bitter pill to swallow. I had, quite literally, constructed that entire department from the ground up, back when it was merely myself, operating from 3 disparate time zones out of a single suitcase, tirelessly endeavoring to convince recalcitrant European partners that Venturon was not simply another promising, delivering tech firm, back when the very concept of international strategy was deemed excessively ambitious for a mid-tier company barely maintaining its domestic foothold. I had painstakingly carved that path with sheer grit, innumerable late-night flights, and an innate fluency in 6-letter acronyms. And now, I stood beneath a glittering chandelier, a forced smile plastered across my face, clutching a champagne glass from which I had not yet sipped, feigning a toast to the very woman who had brazenly appropriated my title, my team, and my meticulously crafted narrative. Mallory, predictably, was radiant. A pristine blonde blowout, a sleek navy sheath dress, her speaking points rehearsed to a state of robotic perfection. She clinked glasses effusively with board members, effortlessly dropping buzzwords like multilateral integration and cross-border scalability, while the ubiquitous PR team captured every choreographed moment. "Thank you all," she intoned, lifting her glass aloft. "It's an immense honor to assume this pivotal role and to continue the strategic vision our company has so brilliantly pioneered." I stood directly behind her, half illuminated by the spotlight, half swallowed by the encroaching shadows. Not a single mention of my name, not a solitary reference to the monumental deals I had just successfully concluded in Tokyo, or the intricate negotiation frameworks I had personally drafted. Jenna Park, my former legal partner, now in secret, one of Trivanta's founding team, brushed past, whispering conspiratorially behind her own glass. "This is surreal." Surreal was a generous descriptor. Individuals I had toiled alongside for years now conspicuously avoided eye contact. A select few of the more decent ones offered awkward, truncated smiles, the kind that silently conveyed, "I recognize the injustice here, but I also possess a profound desire to retain my employment." Grayson eventually took the microphone, toward the denouement of the evening, still commanding, still exuding smugness in his impeccably tailored suit. He possessed that peculiar vocal quality that could successfully peddle sincerity to a ballroom brimming with cynics. "We've watched Mallory grow into this crucial role," he began, his voice resonating with feigned pride. "And I can conceive of no one better suited to spearhead our most profoundly important initiative yet, our global expansion through the Trident Partnership." I froze, every nerve ending screaming. The room erupted in polite applause. Then, he subtly shifted his posture and added, almost as an afterthought, "And she'll be shadowing Marin on the upcoming trip as an integral part of that transition." Shadowing me, as if I were some benevolent mentor, as if I had consented to meticulously train the very woman who had brazenly usurped the title explicitly intended for me, in a department I had meticulously constructed, on a deal I was poised to finalize after 10 arduous months of relentless grinding across myriad time zones. I felt my stomach clench violently, twisting into a painful knot. I yearned to laugh. I yearned to scream. I yearned to hurl my champagne glass into the meticulously carved ice sculpture shaped like a globe. Instead, I nodded. I even managed to conjure a smile, meticulously trained and surgically sharp. People clapped again, and I feigned ignorance of the sound, which echoed like nails dragging against glass inside my skull. But deep within, humiliation burned, a corrosive acid beneath my skin. Not because they had replaced me, but because they fully expected me to facilitate her ascension with grace, with quiet acquiescence, like a loyal, expendable soldier who intuitively understood when it was time to vanish. I drew a slow, deliberate breath and, for the very first time, sipped the champagne. It was flat. Mallory turned, leaning in conspiratorially, radiating an artificial warmth and polished performance. I truly hope we'll find the opportunity to discuss the Sao Paulo structure extensively before the meetings commence. I'm still striving to grasp some of the more intricate European details. You absolutely should. I responded calmly, my voice betraying nothing. They tend to pose rather incisive questions. Oh, she giggled, a brittle high-pitched sound. Well, in that case, I'll simply direct them to you. You always possess precisely the right thing to say. I smiled back, the kind of smile that materializes precisely before the drawbridge irrevocably lifts. Because I already knew, with chilling certainty, that she wouldn't be going. They hadn't yet grasped it. But I had already meticulously booked a second, distinct itinerary, one that conspicuously omitted her, or Grayson, or indeed anyone from the company that had just entered my name beneath a job title freshly adorned with lipstick. Sext, by the time my flight touched down in Tokyo, I hadn't managed a single proper night's sleep in 4 consecutive days. The gala, the saccharine, insincere congratulations, Mallory's smug request to walk through the Sao Paulo structure, Grayson's backhanded announcement, all of it had eroded me to the bone. But none of that held any significance now, because what awaited me beyond each customs gate was an endeavor infinitely grander than my bruised ego. The Trident deal, 3 venerable telecom firms, Telnova in Tokyo, Eurocom in London, and Brazilink in Sao Paulo, poised to forge an alliance in a historic cloud migration. It had necessitated 10 grueling months of discreet introductions, intricate cultural navigation, and painstaking trust building to even persuade them to sit at the negotiation table. Now I possessed precisely 10 days to seal it. 3 cities, 3 continents, absolutely no margin for error. In Tokyo, the tension manifested immediately. Telnova's CTO, Yuki Asano, was exceptionally sharp, profoundly skeptical, and bracingly direct. You promise security. Your competitors also promise security. Why should we place our belief in your offering being more than mere words? He posed this pointed question before the tea had even arrived. I retrieved the encryption specification sheet I had meticulously designed in collaboration with Venturon's internal engineers, a document the board itself hadn't even bothered to review yet. I systematically walked him through the precise, customized protocols we had developed for multi-jurisdictional compliance, real-time redundancy, a zero-trust architecture. When I concluded, he offered no smile. He simply nodded. I comprehend why they dispatch you, he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. The others, they speak, but they do not understand. Following the meeting, we shared a brief, unhurried walk to his waiting car. I paused, then asked softly, almost a whisper, and if there existed a leaner model, the identical tech stack, yet with fewer cumbersome layers between the client's need and the ultimate delivery. Yuki turned his head slightly. You mean less Venturon? Something akin to that, I conceded. He offered no verbal response, but as he settled into his car, he glanced back and instructed, dispatch the materials again, privately. In London, Eurocom's legal team proved considerably more circumspect. The labyrinthine post-Brexit regulatory shifts had transformed compliance into an absolute nightmare, and Venturon's standard contractual language was riddled with infuriating ambiguities. I had flagged these issues previously. They had failed to rectify them. So, I rectified them myself. At 11:40 that night, sequestered in a minuscule flat I had rented for 2 nights, I meticulously rewrote the terms utilizing my own proprietary templates, the ones we had quietly developed through Trivanda's nascent council, spearheaded by Jenna Park. The following morning, I laid the updated drafts across the gleaming, polished table at Eurocom's headquarters. The general counsel, a no-nonsense woman named Linda Clark, arched a skeptical eyebrow. "This," she stated, her voice flat, "is not the Venturon contract. It's the one that works." I countered calmly. "Unless, of course, you prefer a 3-week delay and 50 red lines." She swiftly skimmed the top page. "You did this?" "Yes," I affirmed, off the record. Linda smiled, a rare, genuine expression. "Well, perhaps the next time we negotiate, you'll be seated on this side of the table." I felt something flicker within me. She wasn't merely impressed. She was subtly suggesting something, pondering aloud why I wasn't already the one leading the company I ostensibly represented, and she was not the only one. By the time my flight descended into Sao Paulo, I was operating on a potent cocktail of caffeine and sheer, unadulterated willpower. The Brazilian meeting represented the final, crucial leg, the financial structure, the intricate revenue share model, data sovereignty, all the potential red flags confined within a single room. And, more vexing still, Mallory was ostensibly scheduled to be present, ostensibly to shadow me. She didn't appear. I knew, with absolute certainty, that she wouldn't. I had subtly altered my itinerary at the 11th hour, rerouting myself through Argentina, meticulously ensuring that no internal Venturon team could possibly track my movements in real time. Venturon mistakenly believed I would be arriving a full day later. I was already on the ground, already immersed in the work. The meeting with CEO Luiz Mata extended for 4 grueling hours. He relentlessly grilled me on risk thresholds, capital exposure, and long-term support models. When I held firm on the numbers the Venturon board had vehemently contested with me, he finally leaned back, exhaling slowly. "I trust you, Marin," he stated, tapping the table rhythmically. "But I do not trust Venturon. You comprehend that?" "Yes, I do," I affirmed. "So, if this deal were to unravel later." "It will not," I assured him. He regarded me intently. "Unless you choose to depart." That was my cue. I leaned in. "And if there existed a viable pathway," I began, lowering my voice conspiratorially, "for you to secure this deal without that inherent risk, without the pervasive politics, the incessant noise, the suffocating bottlenecks, would you be receptive?" Luz did not blink. "You know the answer to that? 3 cities. 3 meetings. 3 discrete, yet profoundly significant, seeds planted. And in each instance, the identical, recurring patterns. Profound skepticism directed toward Venturon, unwavering trust directed toward me. Not the corporate logo, me. I had personally borne the immense weight of the entire company across hemispheres, across myriad time zones, through waves of debilitating fatigue. I had anticipated questions before they were even articulated, rewritten complex contracts on my own time, and stood as the crucial intermediary between billion-dollar doubts and billion-dollar commitments. But I wasn't merely concluding a deal, I was decisively opening a door. The cabin lights dimmed once more precisely as we traversed the equator. I had been staring fixedly out the window, the immeasurable darkness below stretching endlessly. When I opened my laptop to review the Sao Paulo meeting notes one final time, the contract summary presented a pristine image. The numbers aligned flawlessly. The client was secured. The deal was done. It should have been the crowning achievement of my entire career. Instead, the screen flickered erratically. The internal server abruptly booted me out. I attempted to re-access. Access denied. I clicked into Slack. Session expired. My company calendar vanished. My Outlook inbox went blank. Then the email. Subject: termination notification. Effective immediately. Sender Grayson Hart. I read the initial line, and my chest tightened, as though gripped by a powerful vise. Marin. Effective immediately. Your employment with Venturon Technologies is terminated. All credentials and accesses have been revoked in accordance with HR protocol. Please refrain from engaging with any company clients or partners moving forward. No salutation. No expression of gratitude. No explanation whatsoever. Just a blade, slid quietly between the ribs 35,000 feet in the air. For a moment, I remained utterly motionless. The flight attendants glided quietly down the aisle, collecting half-empty wine glasses from the late night service. Around me, other business travelers lay cocooned beneath beige blankets, blissfully unaware of the silent corporate execution unfolding. My laptop screen blinked again. This time, it went completely black. They had systematically locked me out of everything. I instinctively reached for my phone. The identical result: VPN blocked. Credentials invalid. Even my internal contacts list had been expunged. They had obliterated me. No forewarning. No meeting. No opportunity to articulate or defend my role. This was not a mere restructuring. This was a deliberate execution. And the sheer insult cut far deeper than the termination decision itself. They hadn't even extended the basic courtesy of waiting until I had landed. They lacked the decency to look me in the eye. They fired me in utter silence while I was suspended mid-air alone, after single-handedly closing the most significant deal in the company's entire history. I should have been consumed by unbridled rage, and perhaps, in some distant, primal corner of my gut, I was. But predominantly, I felt profoundly insulted. Not because they had chosen to release me, but because they harbored the arrogant belief that I was disposable, easily replaceable, utterly powerless. They fired me as if I hadn't just single-handedly shouldered their entire international growth strategy. They erroneously believed that severing access would sever control. They imagined that revoking my email would revoke my influence. They presumed I had no contingency. They were spectacularly, tragically wrong. 6 weeks prior, long before Grayson's subtle power plays, before Mallory's fraudulent promotion, I had diligently adhered to protocol and initiated a private, comprehensive backup of all my Trident deal notes. The legal team had, in fact, approved it as a precautionary measure, a standard procedure for high-risk, multi-jurisdictional deals conducted across linguistic barriers. I possessed everything. The polished pitch decks, every iteration of the contracts, the intricate financial modeling, verbatim call transcripts, even handwritten client feedback. They had declared I possessed no right to engage with clients. They had conveniently forgotten that I was the sole reason those clients remained engaged whatsoever. I reached under the seat, subject the matte, black laptop I had scrupulously never synchronized to Venturon's systems, and placed it upon the tray table. It hummed quietly to life, encrypted offline, utterly untouchable. The wallpaper glowed faintly in the dim cabin light, a simple, half-finished logo. Trivanta. I opened the encrypted folder. Everything was there. Each meticulously crafted market strategy, every nuanced clause in every version of every contract. Secure, legally sound. Mine. The fury finally flickered, but not as a destructive fire, as unshakable resolve. Grayson hadn't merely fired me. He had unequivocally freed me. They foolishly believed that severing my connection mid-air would break me. But all it achieved was to cut the very rope that had tethered me, holding me back. I opened a pristine document, placed my hands upon the keyboard, and typed 3 simple, definitive words. Let's begin. Then I closed the lid and leaned back. Beyond the window, the sky remained an impenetrable, inky black, but for the first time in months I perceived a clear, boundless horizon. The city appeared unchanged from the rear seat of the taxi. I watched the familiar skyline drift past, steel and glass towers shimmering in the late morning sun, yellow cabs weaving through the traffic, pedestrians rushing by, clutching coffees and phones, as if nothing in the world had shifted. But for me, everything had fundamentally realigned. It was 8:40 a.m. when the taxi pulled up to the Venturon headquarters. I paused before exiting, my gaze fixed upon the towering edifice I had entered almost every single day for the past 9 years. It appeared marginally smaller than my memory held, or perhaps I was merely perceiving it through a transformed lens now, less as a sanctuary, more as a place that had never truly belonged to me. As I stepped onto the gleaming marble floor of the lobby, Daniel, the security guard who customarily greeted me with a broad grin and a casual wave, froze. "Ems Blake," he stammered, shifting uncomfortably. I wasn't apprised of your visit today." "I wasn't apprised of my non-visit," I replied calmly, holding up my badge. I pressed it against the gate. Nothing. A harsh red light. "Access denied." Daniel winced, his discomfort palpable. "I'm genuinely sorry. It's just HR flagged the system this morning." I nodded. I offered no argument. It wasn't his fault. He appeared more distressed than I did. But as I stood there, suspended halfway in and halfway out of the very place to which I had dedicated the best years of my life, a peculiar sensation washed over me. Not rage, not grief, just a profound sense of displacement, as though I were a spectral presence, haunting a life that no longer held any existence. I awaited the elevator nonetheless. The receptionist offered no greeting. She barely even looked up. Someone else had already removed my name from the digital display board, outside the 27th floor meeting room. The screen now starkly read, "Strategic Integration, VPM Hart." By the time I reached my old floor, the silence felt almost surgical. Every familiar countenance seemed to deliberately avert eye contact. The junior analysts, who once greeted me with enthusiastic updates, now stared intently into their screens. One even stood up and quietly sidled toward the break room the instant I stepped out of the elevator. No welcome. No questions. No spark of curiosity. My desk, I noted, was already stripped bare. The resilient plants I had meticulously kept alive through the rigors of jet lag and punitive budget cuts were gone. The framed client thank you letter from Eurocom had vanished. Even my chair had been supplanted by a newer model, its tag still dangling from the back. I stood there for a long moment, my gaze fixed on the vacant surface where my entire professional identity had once vibrated with purpose. My nameplate had been removed, not merely relocated, but outright removed. On a nearby table, I spotted a copy of the internal newsletter. The headline screamed, "Mallory Hart to lead Trident Partnership in Global Expansion Push." I picked it up and scanned the article. Following Marin Blake's transition out of the company, VP Mallory Hart will assume full control of the Trident client integration strategy. Transition, a clinical, sanitized euphemism for what had transpired. No acknowledgement whatsoever of the woman who had meticulously constructed the deal, who had flown across 3 continents to painstakingly negotiate it, or who had personally salvaged 2 of the 3 contracts from the brink of collapse. I dropped the newsletter into the trash receptacle. Then, I departed. Back on the street, the city felt louder than before. The incessant honk sharper. The air colder, more biting. People bustled past me. A relentless current of humanity, none of them knowing or caring that I had just been unceremoniously erased. I walked a few blocks to the familiar, unassuming hotel I used to frequent between international flights. They knew me there. No one posed intrusive questions. They assigned me a room on the 15th floor, offering a panoramic view of the river. I drew the curtains, slipped off my shoes, and sat heavily on the edge of the bed, and for the very first time in days, I permitted myself to truly feel it. The hollow space, not grief, not utter defeat, but the profound, unsettling realization that the place into which I had poured my entire being had never truly seen me. They had exploited my intellect, my voice, my very presence. And now, with the flick of a key card and the issuance of a press release, I had been deleted like an obsolete line in an antiquated spreadsheet. But I was not broken. I was unequivocally free. I pulled out my laptop, not the one they had summarily shut down, the other one. The matte black, silent machine that still cradled the future I had begun meticulously designing in absolute secrecy. I opened the secure client portal Jenna and Rahim had helped construct. The encryption was flawless, surgically clean, ready. I clicked open the contact list: Luz Mata, Yuki Asano, Linda Clark, and then, without a nanosecond of hesitation, I dispatched 3 emails. Each contained only 4 words. The door is open. The morning after dispatching those 3 pivotal emails, I sat in profound silence. A cup of black coffee beside me, a croissant I had no appetite for, and my laptop opened on the table. The room was hushed. No celebratory clamor, no effervescent champagne, no overwhelming deluge in my inbox. Just stillness. But not the stillness of utter emptiness. Rather, the pregnant stillness that precedes a profound shift, akin to the brooding sky before a storm breaks. I possessed an intimate understanding of the unfolding drama back at Venturon. Grayson would have entered the Monday morning, executive meeting already on a knife's edge. Perhaps his assistant would have presented him with a printed update concerning the Trident accounts. Except this time, there would be no forward momentum, no eager, confirming messages from the clients, no reassuring check in notes from my end, because I was no longer on their side. And neither, it seemed, were the clients. According to Jenna, who still maintained discreet connections embedded within Venturon's legal department, Grayson initiated his first call to Yuki Asano at 9:15 a.m. No answer. He attempted again 20 minutes later. Nothing. By 10:00 a.m., he had looped in Mallory and the interim strategic team. They then attempted Eurocom. Linda Clark had always been remarkably responsive, direct, and efficient, the kind of individual who replied to emails within the hour and possessed zero tolerance for delay. That morning, the line rang 7 times before diverting to voicemail. At 10:40 a.m., a follow-up email was dispatched to her office address, a second to her legal team. Both bounced back, out of office. Please direct all Trident-related inquiries to your current point of contact. Except, of course, they no longer knew who that was. By 11:30 a.m., an icy panic had palpably set in. They placed a call to Brazilink. Luz Mata's assistant answered, stating simply that he was unavailable. Unavailable today. Grayson pressed, his voice taut with apprehension. No, she replied calmly, her tone devoid of emotion. Unavailable for Venturon. He found himself bereft of a response. He demanded an explanation, but none was forthcoming. Instead, the line went dead. Back in my tranquil hotel suite, I quietly refreshed the client dashboard. Trivanta's newly constructed portal, meticulously engineered with Rahim's elegant design, meticulously tracked every client interaction in encrypted logs. It was not merely intelligent, it was effectively invisible. No public launch, no flashy, self-aggrandizing announcement, just clean, robust, secure, and profoundly human first onboarding. All 3 clients had successfully signed into the system within an hour of receiving my initial message. Each of them had meticulously scheduled exploratory sessions with the Trivanta team. Nothing dramatic, just quiet, deliberate steps toward an inevitable transition. It was all transpiring without a ripple of noise, without a hint of confrontation. No lawsuits, no overt threats. Just silence, the kind of silence that speaks volumes. The kind of silence that unequivocally conveys everything. One needs to know about who still controls the narrative, and who has irrevocably lost it entirely. Venturon was not being actively attacked. It was being utterly ignored. And for a company of its ilk, silence was not merely an absence, it was an irrevocable verdict. Around 1:00 p.m., Grayson attempted one final, desperate maneuver. He instructed someone from investor relations to reach out to all 3 client firms publicly, framing it as a consolidation update, and requesting joint press statements to reaffirm Venturon's continued leadership on the Trident project. Only one of them deigned to reply. It was a concise message, devoid of greeting, lacking a signature block. Venturon no longer speaks for us. You do. I stared at those words on my screen for an extended period. They were simple, unpolished, yet they carried more inherent weight than any hollow title Venturon had ever bestowed upon me. I did not respond immediately. Instead, I rose and walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window. The city throbbed beneath me, oblivious to the quiet, systemic unraveling taking place 32 floors above where I used to sit. The very place that had fired me without a voice was now losing deals in a language they no longer comprehended. Not loudly. Not publicly. Just gone. Jenna called that evening. "They're scrambling," she reported. "Mallory's in an absolute panic. Grayson thinks you're orchestrating all of it, but no one can prove a thing. The clients won't return any of their calls. They don't need to." I replied, my voice calm. "Are you certain you don't wish to?" "I don't know, make a statement. Go public." I gazed at the glowing monitor, at the new Trivanta homepage Rahim had just published. It contained no mention of my name anywhere. No founder section, no about me. Just the minimalist logo, a single line of code in the footer, and a simple, profound promise. What we build belongs to those who build it. "No," I said softly. "Let them sit in the silence a while longer, because this was never about revenge. This was clarity delivered without noise. And it was only just beginning." Esther, at 9:30 a.m., the press release went live. No flashing banners, no opulent launch event, no breathless LinkedIn threads. Just a simple, elegantly crafted announcement, disseminated publicly and directly through Trivanta's dedicated media relations portal, circulated quietly, purposefully, and irreversibly. Trivanta Inc. is proud to announce a multi-continent strategic partnership with Telnova, Eurocom, and Brazilink. The agreement, valued at $1.5 billion over 7 years, will deliver secure, modular cloud integration across 3 regions. Read more on the website Redefining Global Enterprise Connectivity. For media inquiries, please contact Press Trivante. Tech. Signed, Marin Blake, CEO. That was it. No mention of Venturon, no unnecessary fanfare, just surgical precision and undeniable presence. The emails began to trickle in by 10:00 a.m. Not from my former colleagues, but from an entirely new demographic: journalists, industry analysts, astute VC scouts, individuals who had never heard the name Trivanta before this morning, but who now desperately sought to comprehend how a company with no discernible website, until last week, had just executed the most seamless acquisition of 3 legacy clients in a single, audacious stroke. By 10:45 a.m. the inaugural trade article went live, then 2 more, then 6. By 11:15 a.m., TechWatch Global posted a headline that compelled me to lean back in my chair, take a slow, deliberate sip of tea, and smile. The silent takeover: who is Trivanta, and why is everyone at Venturon panicking? Back inside Venturon's gleaming glass tower, the oppressive silence had erupted into unadulterated chaos. Mallory, according to reports, had locked herself inside a conference room with 3 of the junior comms managers. Her voice, a shrill, panicked crescendo, barely penetrating the soundproofed walls. Jenna had sent me a terse text from legal. "They're desperately trying to draft a counter statement. Grayson wants to blame external sabotage." I offered no response. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to argue. Grayson had not been sabotaged. He had simply been comprehensively outmaneuvered. The peculiar thing about painstakingly constructing power quietly is that no one perceives its approach until it has already irrevocably manifested. They remain oblivious to its genesis or the extent of its propagation. They simply awaken to the sudden, unsettling realization that they are no longer in control. That was the fundamental distinction between noise and clarity. Venturon had noise. By 12:20 p.m., Financial Chronicle declared the move the boldest silent shift in enterprise tech since the Altavix pivot of 2011. By 1:15 p.m., Trivanta's nascent inbox was inundated with over 70 partnership requests and investor meeting invitations, none of which we accepted. Not yet. Not until the foundation was irrevocably sealed. Meanwhile, the client's Yuki, Linda Louise maintained an absolute, unwavering silence. Not a single press quote. Not one explanatory tweet. They harbored no reason to explain. They had simply chosen differently. And they had unequivocally chosen me. Rahim arrived at the hotel suite around 2:00 p.m., bearing a bottle of non-alcoholic champagne and a crisp, printed copy of the press release, as if we were archetypal, old-school startup founders. "You going to frame this?" he inquired, a wide grin spreading across his face. "I might tattoo it instead," I countered, a flicker of amusement in my eyes. He handed me a manila folder. "Also financials. They're already in the process of transferring implementation budgets to the Trivandra accounts." Jenna Triple checked everything. No hang-ups. I nodded, exhaling slowly. Not with relief, but with a profound sense of recognition. This was not serendipity. This was meticulous design. Every single move had been deliberately executed. Every conversation meticulously planted. Every client painstakingly nurtured. I hadn't seized Venturon's clients. I had meticulously earned their unwavering trust, while Venturon remained too preoccupied with orchestrating power plays and distributing empty titles. Later that evening, I received a brief voicemail from a number I recognized but had consciously chosen not to save. "Grayson." I played it once, then summarily deleted it before it had concluded. He did not yell. He did not plead. He simply posed the identical question they all ask when the magnitude of their loss finally dawns upon them. Was this personal? Of course, it was personal. It was also profoundly professional. It was strategically executed. It was long overdue. I stood by the window that night, gazing out over the city. The skyline no longer felt cold and imposing. It felt earned. They had taken everything with a cacophony of noise. I had meticulously reclaimed everything in profound silence. No triumphant announcement. No fiery vengeance speech. Just a name on a page. Marin Blake, CEO. And the world was now watching. Not because I had demanded it, but because the undeniable results spoke, with a far greater resonance than anything I could have articulated. Yes? The conference room at the Global Tech Summit in Munich was lavishly adorned with deep blue velvet curtains and gleaming, polished glass tables. Luxury serving as a deceptive mask for desperation. At 9:00 a.m., Grayson Hart stood at the front of room C214, flanked by his newest interim strategy lead and two compliance managers in stiff, uncomfortable suits. The buzz emanating from outside the room was palpable. Venturon had strategically leaked news of a purported breakthrough partnership with a rapidly ascendant Eastern European cloud firm, desperately hoping to signal a recovery after the seismic Trivandra collapse had utterly annihilated investor confidence. Only those on the inside understood the unvarnished truth. This was not a breakthrough. This was a precarious lifeline, and it was already beginning its slow, inevitable unraveling. I watched from the quiet back corner as they began setting up the projection screen. My entrance was unannounced. It required no such fanfare. I had timed it with surgical precision, not for spectacle, but for maximum impact. Grayson paced nervously as he spoke softly with the prospective partner CEO, a broad-shouldered man named Marek Dvorsky. I had encountered him once before, in Prague, over an extended dinner where we had shared remarkably similar ideas on the nuances of sovereign cloud hosting. He did not remember me yet, but he would. At precisely 9:15 a.m., I stepped forward, calm, collected, elegantly dressed in a slate-gray blazer over a simple dress, confidence meticulously stitched into every deliberate step. Marek looked up, then blinked. "Marin." Grayson turned, the color draining from his face so rapidly I genuinely feared he might faint. I walked directly to the table and extended a hand toward Marek. "It's good to see you again." Marek took it with a firm grip, clearly confused yet undeniably intrigued. "You're here with..." "I represent Trivandra," I stated, my voice clear and unwavering. "And I am the other party in this negotiation." Silence rippled through the room, as palpable and unsettling as a dropped glass shattering on stone. Grayson's jaw visibly tensed. "This is a closed session. Marin." "No," I countered evenly. "This is a joint session. Trivanta was formally invited after your firm submitted two conflicting statements regarding global rollout capabilities. The summit organizers requested transparency, full partner alignment." Merrick nodded slowly, the intricate pieces of the puzzle visibly connecting in real time within his mind. I opened my folder and meticulously laid out Trivanta's infrastructure map. It was clean, meticulously updated, and specifically tailored to Merrick's firm's regional expansion plan. Our model was inherently leaner, undeniably faster, and rigorously tested. His CTO had already privately signed off on the specifications, pending this final review. "I comprehend your position," Merrick stated, directing his words to Grayson. "But we simply cannot afford another misalignment. Not after what transpired with Trident." Grayson cut in, his voice sharp with accusation. "That was sabotage!" I did not flinch. "That," I corrected calmly, "was foresight. I offered them a choice. They chose clarity over politics." Grayson wheeled on Merrick. "You genuinely wish to collaborate with someone who summarily abandons her company mid-deal?" I smiled, a sharp, quiet, perfectly composed expression. "I do not abandon ships," I stated, my voice cutting through the tension. "I rebuild them. Without the ones who drilled the holes." There was a pregnant beat of silence. Then Marek looked at his legal team, his decision already made. "We will proceed with a dual review," he announced, his voice firm. "And I want Marin's proposal considered as primary." Grayson stumbled back as if he had been physically struck. I could have concluded it there. I could have quietly savored the victory and departed, leaving him to languish in the suffocating tension of the room. But I hadn't come merely for the win. I had come for the dignity they had so brazenly stripped from me. So I looked Grayson directly in the eye, my gaze steady and cold, and articulated one condition. Everyone in the room froze. "I will proceed with the joint infrastructure, only if you are not involved. I do not deal with people who fire their architects mid-flight." The silence in the room became extraordinarily heavy. Marek hesitated for just a fraction of a breath, then nodded. "I respect that." Grayson's face utterly collapsed inward upon itself. For a fleeting moment, I did not perceive a CEO, but rather a man suddenly realizing that the game was no longer his to play. He left the room without uttering a single word. Outside, the Munich streets hummed with the vibrant energy of late spring sun. Tourists crowding the picturesque cafe tables. I walked toward a nearby courtyard where Rahim and Jenna were patiently waiting, both clutching coffees, both intently watching the live feed from the summit on their phones. "Heard you dropped a bomb." Jenna smirked. "No bombs," I clarified as I settled beside them. Rahim simply chuckled. Balance restored. Rahim raised his cup to me, the architect. I did not raise mine. I wasn't finished yet. But for the very first time in years, I felt as though my name required no defense, because I had walked into the very room they had attempted to exclude me from, and I had irrevocably made it mine. Assets at 7:45 a.m. I walked into the Trivanta headquarters, the morning sun pouring through the towering windows, casting long, luminous lines of light across the clean, polished floors. The vast space was quiet, yet it did not feel cold. It hummed with a distinctive, calm energy, the kind that emanates only from a place meticulously constructed with profound purpose. On the far wall, a new plaque had just been mounted, meticulously etched in brushed steel. It read, "Trivanta, founded by Marin Blake," not tucked away in obscure footnotes, not concealed behind vague team credits, not erased or replaced, just there. Full. Final. Visibly undeniable. I stood before it for a long reflective moment, my fingers lightly brushing the cool surface. A flood of memories washing over me. All the countless times my name had been meticulously written in initial drafts, only to be summarily removed before the meeting commenced. All the meticulously crafted proposals, where I had performed the arduous work, but someone else had stepped forward to present the final slide. All the press releases I had painstakingly edited that never once acknowledged my indispensable contributions. They had systematically taken so many pieces of my voice for so long, but they had never truly silenced me. And now I harbored no need to raise my voice, because the very building spoke unequivocally for me. Back upstairs, I stepped into the boardroom, not the sterile, chrome, heavy, oppressive kind Venturon had once favored, but one with warm, inviting wood, soft, ambient lighting, and walls that subtly encouraged open conversation, not stifling domination. Linda Clark from Eurocom sat on one side of the table, reviewing an integration timeline with Raheem, her expression thoughtful. Luzi's Mata was engaged in a video call in the corner, a warm laugh escaping him as he discussed the latest soccer match in Brazil. Yuki Asano had sent a thoughtful gift, 3 delicate bonsai trees, to be strategically placed around the office, one for each continent Trivanda now proudly supported. I took my seat at the head of the table, but it did not feel like a throne. It felt profoundly like balance. That afternoon, I received a quiet notification on my phone. Mallory Hart had resigned from her position, effective immediately. No formal statement, no interviews, just a solitary line in the industry trades. Sources say the company is undergoing a shift in leadership structure, following the collapse of several major partnerships. No one inquired as to her whereabouts. No one truly cared. An hour later, another notification appeared. Grayson Hart removed from the Venturon board by unanimous vote. There was no public scandal, no protracted lawsuit, no meltdown captured on camera, just removal. A slow, quiet, inexorable unraveling that precisely mirrored how they had attempted to erase me. Only now, they were the ones silently disappearing. Without a sound, without a legacy, without anyone fighting to preserve their diminished place. And me. I did not cheer. I did not celebrate. Because this had never been about raw revenge. It had always been about something infinitely simpler, infinitely more sacred: reclamation. When I affixed my signature to the final consolidated contract later that day, a comprehensive, joint agreement, unifying all 3 Trident partners, under one seamless, multi-regional architecture, I did not hesitate. I did not dwell on the $1.5 billion valuation. I did not contemplate the triumphant headlines or the sweet taste of vindication. I simply considered my name, Marin Blake, and how, for the very first time, I was signing as precisely who I was. No fear, no disguise, no self-delusion. I was no longer merely someone patiently waiting to be recognized. I was, by default, remembered. Because this time, the very foundation bore my name, meticulously carved into its frame. If you have ever had your name unceremoniously removed from a project you poured your very essence into, if you have ever maintained a suffocating silence while someone else brazenly appropriated the credit, if you have ever been instructed to let it go, when what they truly meant was, let yourself go, then hear this: you are not invisible, you are not replaceable, and you are unequivocally not done. Some battles do not necessitate fire to be won. They demand unwavering focus. They demand profound stillness. They demand the relentless passage of time. And when that time irrevocably arrives, let your presence speak louder than your pain. If Marin's arduous journey resonated within you, if you have ever been overlooked, systematically underestimated, or cruelly erased, do not remain silent. Like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, and share it with someone who desperately needs to hear this empowering message. And if you desire more stories where the quiet ones invariably rise, hit subscribe. We are, truly, just getting started.